If treatment goes well, it will eventually be necessary to reintegrate into society as a normal person. However, what if you have changed so much because of your near-death experience that you no longer fit into the conventional world? Perhaps you will have gained some insight that you can offer to more impressionable people who desperately need knowledge. But will they be too stubborn to take your advice? Or will you be too judgmental to give good advice? Despite a deafening sense of urgency to spread the truth in a deceitful world, this can be a very slow process. If you missed the 10th tale of Cancerika, Guidance, please don't forget to listen to the reading. I'll drop a hover card in the upper right that you can click on, or in the description below. The tales are best read in sequential order. I hope that you'll find this particular tale interesting, and please feel free to leave any comments or feedback. This is the 11th tale of Cancerika, with just one more to go. So I'm really hoping you like the overall story. Please let me know if it's any good or not. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can catch the last tale when it's released. Please enjoy the 11th tale of Cancerika, Anticipation. With age comes wisdom. Cancerika, Tales of Survival, Despair, and Hilarity. Written and narrated by Beauheart. Tale number 11, Anticipation. With age comes wisdom. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. All this I will give you, he said, if you will bow down and worship me. Matthew chapter 4, verses 8 to 9. I could feel the soy creeping in, feel it out there making its moves to turn my body as plump as a peach, make my mind only capable of focusing on Netflix and sports ball. I pulled out my hard bodies card and caught an uptown train to the gym. Some suit, a young executive type, a real creep, yelled at me as I pushed past him in the turnstiles. I was evidently his idea of a troublemaker. I ran into the subway and escaped. I was so distracted doing a live-action remake of William Burroughs' Naked Lunch that I'd forgotten to change into proper gym clothes. Looking down at my jeans and Ramones t-shirt that I slapped on after work, I figured they would have to make do. At least I wouldn't be getting all sweaty with the cardio today, I thought. A young corporate-type woman looked at me with a very judgmental grimace. I couldn't tell if it was because she thought I was unemployed or because I was out of shape. Fortunately, I was only going 3 stops on the subway. The doctor had finally okayed me to get back to lifting weights. He advised me to take things easy, allowing my muscles to slowly grow back. But I felt a much deeper sense of urgency. Because the cancer cells were getting killed off by the chemo in greater number, my body was no longer in a constant battle for survival. Well, this was welcome because I wasn't about to die. It had the undesirable side effect of making me soft. It was like the dark days of COVID, sitting around and watching 90 Day Fiancé with no access to weights. I was getting weak. My face had ballooned and would turn red in the heat, a telltale sign of seed oil overconsumption. I began getting the dreaded beer belly because I was eating too many carbs without burning them off through cardio. I looked like every dorky guy in a Netflix comedy who always had to defer to the girl boss protagonist. The archetypal modern man that couldn't even tie his own shoes without some plucky woman laughing at him. It was embarrassing. Looking at myself in the window's reflection on the subway made me feel disgusted. Climbing out onto the street put me right in front of the glass lobby entrance of Hard Bodies. There was a massive 20-foot decal of a man and woman on spin bikes, smiling and giving each other high fives. I wish I could have had that level of enthusiasm. I really wanted to work out, but I was intimidated knowing that it was going to be a long road back to being in shape. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, I said as I walked through the glass doors adorned with the Happy Biker decal. The stench of human sweat and floor cleaner brought the happy memories of late-night workout sessions back to me. I usually liked to come to the gym when it wasn't so crowded, but I had been so eager to get back into shape that I came right after work. "Hey man, nice jeans. I haven't seen you in a while," a familiar voice said. I turned to my right and recognized one of Hard Bodies' trainers. He had helped me with my squat form on numerous occasions. He was a massive powerlifter that would little bro me by giving a lot of unsolicited advice. However, I appreciated it because I was way below his level, and he didn't feel the need to charge me like he did his other clients. Like everyone else in the world, when they made a friend at the gym, I had no idea what his name was. "Good to see you. I had some medical stuff going on here for a while. but I'm back at it. Are you still a trainer here? I asked. Yeah, I've been working with a lot of married women clients lately, he said with a smirk. The trainer was definitely on the handsome side. I wonder if all those bored housewives are trying to do the Magic Mike bit. But I've been giving a bunch of free tips to these younger guys coming in. They really want to get into lifting, but some of them are kind of punks. Oh yeah, I chuckled. What do they do to make you mad? Don't worry, you'll see, he said. I started off doing some basic body weight exercises on a mat. Sumo squats, burpees, and Bulgarian split squats. Getting down on my hands and knees, I wanted to see how many push-ups I could do. I managed to get in 40 of them before my biceps started going wobbly and I had to lay down. I used to be able to do 100, but considering the circumstances, I was pretty ecstatic with my efforts. When I walked into the weightlifting area of the gym, I was totally unprepared for the carnage and disarray. It was lousy with Zoomers. A rowdy gang of them had set up tripods to film cringe talks and Insta reels. It was a dystopian nightmare of augmented reality and broccoli-haired youngsters yelling into their mounted phones. Looking at the state of the area was terrifying. The dumbbells were scattered around the gym like playtime at a kindergarten. The free weights that these pipsqueaks had tried to re-rack were completely out of place. Additionally, there was a 100-pound barbell on the bench press that was precariously off-center on its stands. A feather falling on the long end sticking out would have sent it catapulting over to break someone's foot. Yeah, I told you about these guys, the trainer said, walking up behind me. It's always out of control when school gets out. I really hate picking up after them. We recentered the barbell at the bench press, and the trainer gave me a spot. With some serious exertion and concentration, I was able to do 3 reps. But he grabbed the barbell in the 4th when I started to shake. 100 pounds. That's not bad. Glad you're getting back into it, the trainer said. Thanks, but I've got a ways to go, I said. One of the Zoomers, who looked like he had his phone permanently attached to his right hand, creeped up on us. He was narrating some sort of short clip. You see a lot of guys like this at the gym. They think they're hardcore, but they can't even lift their own body weight, let alone 2 plates. Hey, I already told you guys, the trainer barked. You can film in the gym, but don't be shoving the camera in everyone's face. Just be cool, man, the Zoomer said. First off, I interjected, it's not cool to shame other people's lifting capabilities, especially when they have a medical situation, like myself. Second, why don't you kids clean up after yourselves? The youngster with the camera threw back his head in mock jest. His other friends began laughing. Yeah, whatever. Nice jeans there, Unk. Unk? I just turned 33 and these whippersnappers were acting like I was an octogenarian that just screamed to get off the lawn. Well, that wasn't very skibbity, I remarked. The youngsters went back to making content, and the trainer and I just laughed it all off. We're old heads, man, the trainer said to me. Part of a dying breed that knows about proper gym etiquette and getting in a decent workout. Maybe we just need to show up at a different time, I suggested. Leaving the gym humiliated by the younger generation didn't feel as bad as I thought it would. My muscles had that familiar symmetrical burn going across them that I knew indicated a solid workout. It was nice to get back into exercising after receiving the doctor's blessing, but I knew I was going to have to do a bit of cardio to knock out the carbs. Rather than embarrassing myself at the gym in front of the cute girls that occupied the spin bikes, I decided on spending Memorial Day weekend doing a hike. I was a born and bred city boy. I felt much more at home with smog, roving bands of schizophrenics, and overpriced hipster cafes than the majesty of nature. However, I learned how to ruck in the Marine Corps and was confident that I could survive at night in the Quincy National Forest. It was just a bit outside the city, and as a teenager I used to go there with my friends for afternoons of day hiking and smoking weed. If my stoner self could handle it without getting the Blair Witch Project treatment, I was confident that my more sober and mature cancer self would be fine. I found my old rucksack in the closet with USMC stenciled across the top, plus a one-man tent. I packed up all my clothes, booked a rental car online, and set aside my rucksack for Saturday morning. After work on Friday, I swung by the Republic of Adventure to pick up some camping odds and ends, including a little gas stove. I immediately sensed I was out of my element. There were people in there that looked like they were about to take on Mount Everest. My running shoes and work polo hopefully indicated that I was looking for the beginner gear. A young clerk took pity on me and helped me out. "Where are you heading to?" he asked. "Going up to Quincy for the weekend. Just need to get in a bit of exercise," I said. "Really? Quincy? This weekend?" "Okay, bro," he said. It was a strange response, but I just assumed he was a youngster with maladjusted social issues, like many who suffered through the pandemic lockdowns. "Yeah, just for one night. You got any of those little gas stoves?" I asked. The clerk set me up with a stove, some very expensive trail mix, and a sealed bag that looked like an MRE. "It's mac and cheese and it's a bit spicy," the clerk promised. "It's great." It sounded like the famous jalapeno cheese mix from the Operation Enduring Freedom era MREs. I was excited. A group of 5 attractive young girls and 2 guys with man buns walked into the store. They interrupted me getting helped and started asking the clerk for a bunch of strange items. "Do you have any of those glow sticks where you can wrap a bunch around your neck? We need some for the festival," one of the girls asked. "Can we get some quinoa candy bars?" one of the guys asked. "Any biodegradable tampons?" one of the other girls asked. That was my cue to leave the Republic of Adventure. I arrived at the trailhead after an early morning exodus from the city. I grabbed my rucksack out of the trunk of the rental car and did a final inventory before heading out. Cancer meds? Check. Tasty packaged food? Check. Journal? Check. I decided to pack a gratitude journal after consulting a mental health website. It was a bit womanish, but I thought collating the ideas rolling around in my head might bring about some serenity. However, if anyone else found out about it, I would have been mortally embarrassed. Therefore, I had labeled the front of it 2019 Andrew Yang Campaign Cold Call List. No one in their right mind was going to want to snoop around in it. The first mile of the hike was nice, no hills. The trail was well worn, and I had come across several fellow travelers heading back to the parking lot after a night of camping. I did the bit where you raise your head, give a used car salesman smile, and mutter, "Hi." It was proper trail etiquette and a good way to show other hikers that I wasn't a serial killer. Off to the side of the trail was a marsh area with a multitude of cattails poking out like hot dogs on sticks at a street fair. I grabbed one of them and peeled it apart in a maelstrom of seeds that blew away in the wind. I opened up my journal and penned the following. "I've seen some of the tallest man-made buildings in the world and the most attractive women dressed up for the VIP, but they aren't nearly as beautiful as one of God's cattails." I saw a small mountain peak a couple miles away. It had an elevation of about 300 feet. It was a bit steep for my cancerous self, but I thought I could make it. I had been up there before with my buddies when I was young, and it offered a fantastic view of the city. I was munching on the trail mix and came upon a small creek. I had to wait for a young couple plus an older gentleman, who I assumed was someone's father, to slowly step over the moss-covered log. I gave them a polite greeting as they passed and hopped onto the log to get across toward the peak in the distance. Just then the old man's phone started ringing. I believe the ringtone was the theme from the original Hawaii Five-0. There's nothing louder or more annoying in the world than old people attempting to answer their cell phone. A SpaceX rocket launch is like a baby's lullaby in comparison. "Hello, Meryl, can you speak up? The reception is bad here," the geezer announced to the entirety of the Quincy National Forest. I turned around to observe the commotion, and the $20 trail mix slipped and fell into the creek, slowly floating away. I was a bit bummed since it was my entire food supply until dinner. However, I recalled Jesus had made it 40 days in the desert without food, so I figured I could at least go without snacks through the late morning and afternoon. I was worried that my anemia would slow me down on the way up the peak, but it wasn't too bad. My kidneys were back in business. Arriving at the top of the peak, I was first struck by how the skyline of the city looked smaller from the same vista than when I was a youth. When I first came up here, it was like stumbling upon an intricately crafted city in a Minecraft Let's Play. Now the skyline looked like little concrete teeth poking out of the ground. It was odd that the city looked so much smaller, as it had expanded greatly in the last 15 years. I suppose I was the one who had changed. I penned the following in my journal. The city's skyline 10 miles away with its hustle and bustle contrasts sharply with the natural surroundings I currently find myself in. It's like Blade Runner down there, but I've managed to escape. I feel like Detective Deckard if he got some R&R from retiring replicants and decided to go for a hike. After some time ruminating on the difference between man's foolish creations and nature, two men climbed up next to me on the peak. I gave them a cordial head nod as they walked past and caught a snippet of their conversation. "You have to trust in a higher power. It's one day at a time," said the shorter man. "I'm not sure that I can do it any," the other man replied as they faded to the other side of the rock face. They must have been in one of the 12-step programs. I had numerous friends over the years in both Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, so I was familiar with the lingo. I came to the Quincy National Forest to battle my disease, and they also came to battle their own diseases. Same deal, I guess. I clambered down the peak and went off trail for a few hundred yards. There was an open meadow that wasn't totally overgrown, so I could avoid the bugs and ticks. I decided to throw down a tarp and grab a quick snooze in the afternoon sun. I was hoping that a bear wouldn't eat me while I napped. However, when I found out what I was going to be privy to when I woke up, being a bear's lunch would have been preferable. I woke up under the afternoon sun to a steady pulsating rumble that I could feel deep in my eardrums and chest. It was faint, but I could tell that the source must be tremendously loud. I looked around as if a cavalcade of mercenaries was going to descend on me, but all I saw was the waving grass of the meadow. Boom, boom, boom. What was that incessant sound? I packed up my tarp and scrambled to the edge of the meadow toward the tree line. As I navigated through the trees, the steady rumble gave way to something resembling a low-frequency rhythm. About 100 yards through the forest, the trees abruptly ended to give way to an open field. When I got to the edge of the canopied area, I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to find. An alien abduction taking place? A CIA black site? Instead, I came into the field and saw something worse than I could have ever imagined. Hippies. There were hundreds of unhygienic freaks gyrating to EDM, being spewed by some dreadlocked DJ. There was a massive tent set up as a shade structure, and to the right of the stage was a giant 10-foot statue that resembled the Hindu goddess Shiva. Instead of the traditional Indian garland, this mock deity had a string of glow sticks draped around its neck. A stack of speakers surrounding the DJ booth continuously blasted music, sending sound waves rippling through the otherwise serene environment. This was an affront to decency. This was an assault. Much like the King of the Hill episode where Bobby and Hank are besieged by hippies while camping, I felt that my sanity was being violated. I refer to the ravers as hippies, but it was more accurate to categorize the people I stumbled upon as the children and grandchildren of hippies. These Trustafarians were certainly acting with the entitlement and obnoxiousness that has spanned 70 years. Like everything else in modern society, culture is an echo of what the baby boomers originally wrought. We just live in their pale shadow. The baby boomers gifted the world the Manson family, sexually transmitted diseases, and recreational drug abuse. These were all on display at this little get-together. I had no idea how the park rangers at the Quincy National Forest permitted this. Perhaps some of them were partaking in the festivities. This must have been why the staff at the Republic Adventure thought it was funny I was heading out hiking this weekend, and why those degenerates had bought all the weird items. I always had a knack for bad timing. I hid my rucksack in the woods and headed down to the field rave. There was a small booth manned by an obviously stoned young man to admit people into the party. A crude cardboard sign stated, "Pay what you feel like." So I dropped a $10 bill into the bucket and walked in. The guy at the booth didn't seem to notice. He was probably somewhere on the moon. Even though the sun still had set, the party was going pretty strong. Everyone was high and dancing like some ancient pagan sun ritual. 2 different people asked me if I had any ketamine. I apparently was clean cut enough to pass for an entrepreneur. A group of 3 girls in their early 20s came up and started dancing with me. One of them had a feathered lei wrapped around her like a boa constrictor. She had henna tattoos going up both arms. It would have been very attractive if she took a shower. She threw the lei around my neck. "Hey, where do you think you're going? Aren't you going to party with us? You're pretty cute," she asked. My sunk cancer eyes had gone away, and my hair was returning. However, I still only rated myself a 4, perhaps a 5 on my better days. This girl must have been flying high if she thought I was cute. I inspected her eyes, and they were so dilated it was like twin full moons over a starless cityscape. "I'm just cooling it," I said as she whipped back the feather lei. I made my way through the dancing crowd. The girls were all young and attractive, wearing spaghetti-strapped brasiers that looked like they were made out of hemp. They weren't so far down the hippie rabbit hole that they had hairy legs and armpits, but they did possess a certain funky smell from partying outside all day. Most of the men had their shirts off, and many had necklaces with amulets on them, like you would see in Southeast Asia. The same scene could have been in Budapest, Byron Bay, or Bali. All culture, even counterculture, was hyper-globalized now. I think the young people dancing in the forest like nymphs realized that they weren't exceptionally special. They were just trying to maximize their pleasure while they still had the opportunity. It was like having one more glass of champagne as the Titanic sank. I walked up to the base of the stage where a bevy of women were flashing their cleavage, trying to get the DJ to notice them. Hey, play that one EDM song you did at your set in Oslo, a blonde woman said. The DJ did not look up from his turntables despite the attention from the gaggle of attractive ladies. The dreadlock DJ must have been swapped out, and the new guy was all business. He had on a bucket hat and his face was hiding behind wraparound shades. He looked like a coke dealer who abused his girlfriend. While the party wasn't exactly my cup of tea, he was a talented DJ. The beats per minute stayed consistent as one track led into another. The music just never ended, like doom scrolling through an endless social media feed. After meandering through the crowd for a few minutes, I finally managed to get to where the vendors were located. I was not surprised to see a massive pop-up stand labeled Uncle Jerry's Feel-Good Cannabis with the logo of an elderly bearded man smoking a joint. There were gummies, brownies, and sticky buds all on display in colorful glass jars. The aesthetic mirrored that of a candy shop you would find in a seaside tourist town like Cape Cod. The purpose must have been to appeal to children, like a 1950s pack of bubble gum that looked like cigarettes. So, we've officially become a weed society, I thought. I recalled the meme of the alcohol-based society versus the weed-based society. The alcohol society depicting the engineering marvels of ancient Rome, and the weed society showing a collapsed single-story mud hut. It didn't help that marijuana had become so strong since being legalized 2 years ago. It was no longer recreational, but a fast track to psychosis. I was grateful I'd stopped smoking when the only purchasing option was swag from the dealer at the local 7-Eleven. The food trucks at the gathering were plentiful, but pricey. There was a kebab shop with two Middle Eastern gentlemen slicing meat and selling it to hungry festival goers hand over fist. I have a soft spot for Mediterranean food, and I could feel myself salivating when I saw that they had falafel on the menu. But then I remembered that I was doing a biblical type fast, and I purged it from my mind. I could always cook up the mac and cheese that was safely stowed in my rucksack when the sun went down. Speaking of the sunset, I was certain some group of hippies was going to set up a drum circle on the outskirts of the festival sooner or later. Sure enough, when I went wandering to find a porta potty half an hour later, I was treated to a drum circle. Hey man, come join, a young fellow with dreadlocks said. I shrugged my shoulders and said, sure. I nestled into the circle of about a dozen people and sat cross-legged. Glad you could join, bro, he said as he tapped on a miniature bongo drum. Thanks for letting the geriatric in, I said, self-aware that I was the proverbial old dude at the party. So where are you guys from? We all go to State, said one of the girls, in between puffing on a joint. That's my alma mater, I said. Do you like it? Yeah, it's pretty fun, she said as she exhaled the monster-sized cloud of smoke. I must have gone to a different part of State. College for me was lousy 12-hour homework assignments from sadistic comp sci professors and late nights spent in the computer lab. Some weeks the only fun I had was getting free food at a recruiter event and swiping their silverware. Not that I was bitter or anything. That's cool you like it, I said. You guys come to these parties a lot? Sometimes, one of the more jack guys jumped in. He had on a ripped white undershirt that exposed his chest. Most of the girls in the drum circle were keen on what he had to say. This is the first one at Quincy. The park rangers are real fascist about the get-togethers. I think it turned out pretty well, but this one's kind of small. How big do they get? I asked. The one in McCord had about 5,000 people, he replied. It was amazing and lasted 2 days. We stayed up the entire time. Yeah, that was a wild weekend, said a girl wearing comically large sunglasses. We met so many righteous people. I remember when McCord was still an Air Force base, I said. They used to do air shows there when I was a little kid. But they shut it down in the late 90s due to Clinton-era budget cuts. I looked around the drum circle, and I had apparently committed a faux pas. Their faces were more stunned than if I had just informed them that Santa Claus was not real. Apparently no one cared for my little history lesson. The specter that they too would get old someday must have really spooked them. "So what brings you here? You like to party?" the girl with the large sunglasses asked. "Oh, I was just wandering around the forest and sort of stumbled upon this little get-together. Seemed cool, so I decided to check it out," I said. "Oh, wow, man, that is amazing," one of the guys chimed in. He was wearing a Baja hoodie and liked to chew on its drawstrings. He must have been really high. "Imagine just going about your business and all of a sudden you walk into F3. "What's F3? I asked. "Forgotten Forest Festival. It's where you're at now, bruh," he replied. "Is that what this wingding is called?" I asked. "Forgotten Forest Festival? I guess that's a good name." "Yeah, but the group that organizes these changes the name every time there's a new event," the Baja hoodie guy replied. "There's one in California called Desert Temptation. It's set up right near the Salton Sea, and my man, there is literally nothing out there. I went last year and it was amazing. The DJ was enclosed in a massive dome that had speakers attached all over it. There were these statues of golden lions shooting flames from their mouths. It was like Mad Max." "Sounds crazy," I said. "Who's the group that organizes these festivals?" The hippies looked around at each other and sort of shrugged their shoulders. I hoped not to harsh the vibe too much with all the questions, but I was genuinely curious. "They say it's a group of organizers from the East Coast," the weed-smoking girl replied. "They're pretty well funded. That's why it's so cheap for everyone to get in." It seemed a bit vague and mysterious, so I dropped the subject. "You guys ever come out to Quincy for exercise?" I asked. "I love it out here, and I've been coming ever since I was your age. It's nice being in nature, huh?" "What do you need exercise for? You look pretty healthy," the dreadlock guy with the bongo drum said. "Thanks, but I've got cancer and all, I said. "Really?" asked a pretty girl wearing a pagan-like laurel perched atop her head. "Yeah," I said. "I'm getting better, though." "I don't believe cancer exists, man," the Baja hoodie guy said. "I think it's a scam." "Well, scam or not, I don't wish it on anyone," I said. "It only seems like people started getting cancer in the last 20 years. Maybe it's the CIA, he smirked. I wanted to correct him that things like the Forgotten Forest Festival were the CIA. But there was no need to slam dunk on these young, impressionable souls. I tried reasoning with them by means of a history lesson instead. "Well, if you look at old Egyptian pharaohs that were mummified, some of them had brain tumors. In the Bible, kings were always dying of mysterious illnesses that they didn't understand, which was probably cancer since they had identified other life-threatening diseases at the time, like leprosy. Jesus was in the Bible. He was cool. He loved everybody," the girl with the laurel wreath said, trying to lighten the mood. "Sure, but he got frustrated at people too. Like people ignored him and didn't want his help," I said. "He also got mad when there was egregious acts of sin, like when he flipped over the money changers' temples at the temple." The girl looked upset and didn't want to screw up a chance to evangelize. "But the New Testament was great," I said, correcting my tone. "Jesus was definitely about love." She smiled at me. "I really like Buddha," said the Baja hoodie dude as a blunt was passed to him. "He just kind of walked around and chilled. I could do that. I could get enlightened." We continued talking late into the evening. A lot of it was inane chatter, but a lot of it was profound. I never really engaged in a prolonged conversation that fluctuated between the ridiculous and the sublime. It practically gave me whiplash. At one point, the girl with the laurel on her head gave me a 10-second hug. Then she whispered in my ear, "I'm on Molly, but you're a beautiful soul." I smiled and looked at her like a father looks at his daughter when she makes a minor mistake, like spilling chocolate ice cream on a new dress. "Thanks, so are you," I said. I kind of felt bad. She was so bombed out on drugs, along with the rest of her friends in the drum circle. They were just young people trying to escape from the boredom of mass-produced society and create a culture of their own. Although they were really going down a dark path with all the drugs and ritualistic abnormalities. The girl with the laurel wreath could have been the main character in a Grimm Brothers fairy tale, a morality lesson on why it's a bad idea to run off into the woods and meet up with strangers. People started to peel off from the drum circle to go crash or hook up. It must have been about 1 a.m. The festival was still going, albeit at a more tempered pace. The mass of gyrating bodies was now just a few hardcore party animals, with everyone else sort of milling about. Some people had fallen asleep on the trampled grass off to the side. I didn't want to be too judgmental, but there was a lot of work that needed to be done. These people were like the Lost Boys of Peter Pan, the quintessential group of terminal adolescents, constantly chasing the shadows of instant gratification and carnal pleasure, never ascending. However, this kind of destructive behavior was obviously encouraged by the establishment. A gathering of this size on public land couldn't just happen without the powers that be blessing it off. Eventually, these people would grow up and probably be supervising me at my job one day. That, or they would be working in the government and dictating the terms and conditions of society more broadly. I had a first-hand look at how the elite propagate their ideas, feeding a bunch of drugs and sex to college students, and then brainwashing them with wicked ideas about how the world should function. I was glad not to be a permanent part of this, but I needed to be standing athwart it and evolve toward a different kind of life. I realized I was getting old and didn't have as much in common with the younger generation as I thought. But standing aside to allow them to enjoy their youth in such a reckless fashion just wouldn't do. I felt impelled to provide them wisdom. Whether it be the obnoxious gym goers or the young partying college kids, I thought I had something to teach them. Hopefully that wasn't old man talk. I could give the Zoomers at the gym tips on working out, even if I wasn't the spitting image of a Bronze Age pervert post. For the party goers, perhaps I could do a better job of leading them away from false teachings and wicked ideas. I just needed to strategize my approach. I walked back to the tree line where I'd stashed my rucksack. It was late, but I knew how to set up a stove and cook a dinner in the dark. I trekked far, far away from the pulsing bass rhythm and pitched my tent. Opening my journal, I penned the following. The mac and cheese was delicious. I'm grateful for what I have. End of tale. Thank you for having a listen to this tale of Cancerika. I hope that you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below whether you like the story or not. A forthcoming ebook, print book, and audiobook with all 12 tales will be released on April 18th, 2025 on Amazon and Audible. Links are posted in the description below. The pre-order is available for the ebook. It's $4.99 or free if you're an Amazon Prime. You can shoot your mouth off at me over on X. I'm at Beauheart. Please visit friendlyfrogpress.com to see our collection of ebooks, paperbacks, and audiobooks that are for sale at Amazon and Audible. Until next time, this is Paul Beauheart, signing off.